Hey guys, it's Miss Jen. I'm here at the studio and we're just a few days before Christmas, but I wanted to work on getting my students and parents a simple video explaining how to use the Brother CP100x. I know there's quite a few of you that requested a sewing machine. It was on your Christmas list this year, and I thought it would be helpful if I did a video, very short video, but something that you can use on those first few days after Christmas as you're eager to start putting your sewing machine to use. So I'm going to just briefly walk you through all the different parts on this machine. Then we're going to go over how to correctly thread your machine, and I'm hoping to be able to throw in a few tricks as far as if your machine gets jammed, if you get your fabric or your threads caught and tangled in the machine, how to get yourself out of that situation. Like once that happens, what do you do? So I'm hoping to have time to put that in there as well. If you have any questions after you watch this video, feel free to email me. You're welcome to text me. I will be spending some time with my family, but as we get further into the holidays, closer to the new year, I will be catching up on those emails and text. So feel free to send me your questions if you get stumped on anything. But I'm hoping that this is a clear enough video for you to be able to use it, rewind it, fast forward it as you need to, as you're learning your way around the machine. Okay guys, like I said, we're gonna start out with just learning our way around the sewing machine. So, to turn your machine on and off, there's a little switch here on the side. You can see it's located right there. And all you're gonna do is just push that button, and that's gonna turn your sewing machine on. There's also an outlet here for your foot pedal and your power cord. So now that our machine is on, you can see the light comes on. You may have heard a little noise. That was just the needle kind of calibrating, getting set in the right location there for sewing. So as we're looking a little closer, you can see the needle. I'll try to focus, there we go. The needle's located right here, and as we look towards the bottom of the needle, you will see the eye of the needle. That is actually one of the parts that we'll be threading in just a few minutes. This part right here is called the presser foot, and if we look at it from the side, it actually kind of looks like a foot. But the presser foot is a very important part of the sewing machine. When we're sewing, it needs to always be lowered. So the way that we lower our presser foot is a little lever located inside of the sewing machine area right here. You'll see that little gray or white arm right there. We're just going to pinch it, go ahead and lower that down. And you can see that the presser foot is now standing against the needle plate. And there's no space in between the presser foot and the needle plate. To raise the presser foot back up, we're simply going to go ahead and get the lever again and raise it up. Be careful when you're raising and lowering the lever. You do want to be, gentle. You don't want to let your presser foot slam against the machine. That will wear it out over time. As we move kind of up towards the top of the machine, there's a few other things I would like to point out. This is going to be your stitch selector screen, and these are all the stitches that this machine will sew. 0 and 1 are both straight stitches. Those are probably going to be your most popular, your most useful stitches. A lot of my students will ask, well, what is the difference between 0 and 1? If they're both straight stitches, why do we have 2 of those? And the difference is stitch 0 is with the needle to the left, and stitch 1 is with the needle centered. And that little dot here represents that needle position. If you're looking at stitch 2 and you're thinking, well, that also looks like a straight stitch, it is a straight stitch, but the difference between this one is that it's made for stretchy fabrics. So you only want to use stitch 2 when you're using a stretch fabric. You can look all the way down and you can see all the different practical stitches this machine will do. There's also some buttonholes here, and then of course your decorative stitches as you get towards the end. When we're ready to set our machine to a certain stitch, we're simply going to use this, the controls right here. So right now we're set to 0. If we want to go, let's just say to stitch 32, we're just going to use this first button to control the first digit. and switch that over to 3, and then we're going to use the second button, and it's controlling the second digit, and we'll set that one to 2. So now we are ready for sewing stitch 32. You may also notice that there's a few numbers here to the right of the stitch selection. So the top number is going to be your length. All stitches have, they have different lengths. The machine is going to set it to the most ideal stitch length, the most practical stitch length. It just automatically will set it to that, but you can customize it as needed or as wanted. You're just going to use this button to go up in length, or, use the subtraction symbol to go down in length. The next number here is for width. You can see a little, kind of like a little zigzag design beside it to help you remember that that is for width. But again, you can customize that depending on what you're doing, if you need to make that wider or more narrow. So again, that's your stitch selector. That's how you're going to navigate between your different stitches. And just to show you once more, just to take us back to our stitch 0, I'm going to go ahead and use this button to control the first digit and this button to control the second digit. As we move over on the machine, you'll notice a little slider located here in the very center of the machine. That is our speed control. Young beginners that love to go, they're thinking, the faster the better. In class, I encourage them to go slowly, because in sewing, slower is better. So that way we have more control as we're steering, and we also are safer as we're steering our fabric through, going at a slower speed. So we can set the maximum speed to slow, or medium, which is going to be here, or full speed. But I would suggest, especially if this is a child using the machine, have them start out on slow and kind of work their way up to the faster setting. That's something that they will discover over time too, how useful that feature is. But the way that they'll also be controlling their speed is going to be their foot pedal. Of course, this would normally be on the floor, but for this video, I just put it here on the tabletop. But again, the harder they press the foot pedal, the faster the machine will go, and then the less they press it, the slower the machine will go. This is simply limiting their range of speed. So instead of giving them the full range, it is limiting them to, slow, medium, or full speed. As we move on across, you're going to see these buttons located here. The first one is the needle up, down button. So that's very helpful when you're sewing. It's going to control the needles if it's up or down. So you simply just tap it once. It will lower the needle, tap it again. It will raise the needle. There's also a hand wheel located right over here to the right side of the machine, and that will also control the needle. So I'm simply turning it. I'll go back here. We're going to turn it towards ourselves, always turning the hand wheel towards yourself. That will raise and lower the needle. As we look at the second button, it looks basically like a U-turn symbol. That button is for sewing in reverse. So anytime you're starting a seam or ending a seam, you want to sew in reverse for a few stitches. So you're simply going to press and hold the U-turn button. This button is a feature used if you're doing a lot of decorative stitching and you know that you're going to be sewing the same stitch for an extended amount of time. You can actually use this instead of using the foot pedal to control the speed. It's almost like cruise control when you're driving a car, if that makes sense. You don't have to use the foot pedal. You will just press this button to go, and then it's going to sew. When you press it again, it will stop. So the foot pedal is not used with that feature. I would suggest for kids not to use that feature. They really need to learn how to control their speed using the foot pedal, and it's just safer, more intuitive to use the pedal instead of the button. As we move on across, we're looking here at this tension control. This is going to be our tension on our top thread, and that is something that you really want to keep that between 3 and 5 for most fabrics. Sometimes you will need to go under 3, for certain fabrics. Sometimes you need to go over 5 for other types of fabrics. But I would say most of those are going to fall, most basic fabrics are going to fall somewhere between the 3 and 5 range. It's a good idea just to keep it at 4 for most fabrics. And then let's see, let's move up to the top of the machine and kind of talk about what's going on here. This is the bobbin winder. So we will be putting thread onto a bobbin in just a few minutes, but that is the bobbin winder. This is your spool pin. Sometimes when you first purchase it, it may be in the down position. When you're sewing, make sure it is all the way up. As far as your bobbin winder, I meant to mention, it slides to the right when we're winding a bobbin, but back over to the left when you're sewing. If you leave it in the right hand position, your machine will not run. It'll throw like a little error reading here. It'll say E6 or E2, something like that. And that just means that you forgot to slide this over. As we're moving over here, this is one of our threading brackets. We use that when we're threading our machine. And specifically, this little button here is only used, we only use this little button when we are setting up our machine to wind a bobbin. So keep that in mind, that's only for bobbin winding. The rest of this bracket, we'll walk you through in just a minute how to use it to thread the machine. If you probably can't see on this video, but there is a little hook located right here in between this little opening. And in class, lots of times with my kids, I will call that the gooseneck. It's just a cute way to remember that. But it's called the take-up lever, and it's just another hook that we'll be using when we thread our machine. And then as we move on down, we can see the bobbin housing is located here. And this is a little window that does slide off. You just kind of press down and slide it forward, and that just comes off so that you can load your bobbin into the bobbin housing. And then of course this little window will slide back on. This table is also removable, and I'll try to show you that on the video, but it does have little legs here. You'll see those. I'll show them a better view of those in just a second. But we're going to slide this off anytime we need to open up the free arm of our machine, and that allows us to put fabric around both the top and the bottom, kind of like around the machine, making it easier for us to sew through a single layer of fabric. Think of it like if you're sewing around a sleeve or around the cuff of a pair of pants, that's when you would want to be able to access that. So again, this is an extendable table, and I'll try to get a good view of this here, but that is very useful for my young beginners, especially when they're sewing and need more space for their hand placement. I'll show you the back side of it. Simply looks just like this. Sorry for this angle here, but these little legs do pull out, and that's going to help to give that more stability when we place this on the machine. And it just slides right back into place there, something like that. I may not be able to fully complete that with one hand, but you get the idea. It's just going to slide right into place. So one more thing, this little hook right here, and that is going to be your thread snips. So when you're finished sewing and you remove your fabric from the machine, you're going to take your threads, let them cross over, pull down, and that will snip your thread for you. As we're zooming in a little closer, we also have a needle threader here, and I'll show you how to use that in a few minutes. And that is pretty much it as far as the main parts of this sewing machine. Okay, we're moving right along. This video will focus on teaching you how to fill up a bobbin. A bobbin is just simply a small spool of thread. So your machine should come with some bobbins. They're usually located in the tray that is attached to your machine, because this is the longer table, but I'm talking about the little small tray. When you take it out of the box, you'll see a little baggie in there. So it's going to include some of these for you. You can also purchase more online. I'll be happy to share some links for those, or you can buy them at Hobby Lobby, Joann's, any of the fabric stores here locally. So what we're going to do when we're winding a bobbin, we're going to first place our bobbin onto the bobbin winder, which is right here. Then we're going to take our thread. I tried to choose a bright thread for you to really be able to see what I'm doing here. But we want to pull, well, let me back up. We want to place our thread on our spool pin. So making sure that it goes right onto the spool pin, and that the spool pin is in the up position. Then we're going to take the end of our thread and simply route it over to this bracket. We're going to go under this bracket here. I'm going to lay the thread here for just a second. If you notice this drawing, number 1, the one that has the circle around it, that is the path for your thread when you're winding a bobbin. So they're showing it go underneath this little arm of the bracket and then around the front of the little bobbin button to the back, and then we're going to go over to the bobbin winder. So just to kind of talk through that before I show you. So what we're going to do is take our thread, we're simply going to go under this little bracket here, and then we're going to come around the front of the button to the back. Making sure when you do that, and sorry for my hand being in the way there, but making sure when you do that the thread does actually engage like underneath that little disc. You can see how it kind of lifts a little. Make sure that when it wraps, it's not laying in front of it, but that it's actually going underneath it and around. We're coming over to our bobbin, and we're simply going to go ahead and slide the bobbin over to the bobbin stop, just like this. We're going to take our thread, placing it along the back side of the bobbin and pulling our, wrapping our thread, I should say, clockwise around the bobbin. And I would say do this maybe 4 or 5 times. And then we're going to take our thread, we're going to make sure it's going right through that little slit. You're going to pull and it cuts your thread for you. So at this point, we are all set up and ready. We have our thread over here at our bracket. You can kind of see how that is routed. I'll try to focus in there. Remember, under the bracket, around the front of the button to the back, and then we're coming over to our bobbin winder. So once we're over here and we are ready to go, we're just simply going to push our foot pedal. I'm just going to use my hand here to push the foot pedal, but you'll be using your foot. You can see how it starts to spin. We'll keep going until it's full. If you want to speed up your speed control here, you can go to full speed for this. It's going to stop spinning once it's full. Sometimes it'll start to slow down a little bit too, but you want to fill the bobbin all the way up. It's kind of a good, rule of thumb. Just go ahead and fill it up when you're winding it. Okay, so we ran out of thread here, but you would just continue winding your bobbin until it stops. It will stop spinning when it's full. So that's what you have. At this point, we're just going to slide this over to the left. Always sliding that over to the left before you pick it up. You will still have a thread attached to yours, so you would want to cut that thread loose. But this is what you should end up with. Notice it's very evenly wound. We don't have any fluffiness to our threads. It looks like a very tightly wound bobbin. There's no unevenness. So this is an ideal bobbin, and it is important that your thread is nice and smooth when you wind it. So I'll stop the video and then pick up with how to thread our machine. Okay, so this portion of the video, we're just going to focus on learning how to thread the top of the machine, and I will include a separate portion walking you through how to thread the bobbin. So to thread the top of the machine, we're going to place our spool of thread here. I'm just going to walk you through the steps verbally first, and then I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. But we're basically going to route our thread using this bracket. We're going to go under and over, and then we're coming down. It is numbered for you. So this was number 1. This is number 2. We're coming down this little path here, And then as we go down, we're going to kind of circle underneath the tension disc here, and we're going to bring our thread back up along this path to the top of the machine, focused here on the take-up lever. So we're going to be taking our thread around right through here, and I'll show you in just a minute how to do that. But we want to make sure we catch the take-up lever. And then step 5 is going to be located here, and it's pointing down to the needle. So we're going to go to our little hook right here that's located under step 6. And then from there, step 7 is going to be threading your needle. So you're going to use the needle threader. To do that, you don't have to use the needle threader. You can just manually thread the needle if you choose to do that. So to show you how that looks using thread, we're going to take our thread, and I'll just reach across the machine here, and we're going to go under this portion of the bracket. So we want to make sure we're going under, and I usually just hold the thread tight like this, place it under the bracket, and then wrap over. From there, we're going to come down at 2. We're just taking our thread straight down this little slot here. We're going to wrap it under at 3. You'll be able to see the number 3 on your machine. We're going to wrap it under. We're coming back up to the top of the machine. When we get to the top, we're going to focus on the gooseneck. It's the little hook right inside of this opening. If the gooseneck is in the down position, and sometimes it is, just use your hand wheel to raise that back up. You'll be able to see it kind of come up to the top there. It will not come all the way out the top of the machine, but it should be at its as high as it can go. So we're just going to take our thread, kind of slide it along the right hand side, wrapping towards the left and pulling forward. Make sure that you can, see that it is caught in the gooseneck. You want to make sure that that is there. If you miss the gooseneck, your machine will jam and cause you some problems when you're sewing. Okay, so we just kind of going in for a closer view here of the needle area. And just to kind of get you familiar with where, kind of get your bearings. Step 5 is here at the very top of the screen, right beside your tension dial. So our thread at this point is coming down at 5, and we're going to be sliding it behind this hook that's located right underneath number 6. If you see right there where my little pointer is located. So the best way to do this is to hold your thread with your left hand and guide your thread tail with your right hand. Just like this, we're guiding right to left. It kind of clicks behind that. And that's all we're gonna do. From there, we're ready to thread our needle. We're gonna try our best to show you the option here for using the needle threader. This is very handy feature on this machine, but it does take a minute to learn it. So if you want to skip this and just thread your needle manually, that's always an option. But what we're going to do is take our thread, and we're going to just pull it right through this little groove here. And then you'll see number 7. We're going to guide our thread right on top of that silver plate above number 7. Just like that. You can see the thread going back to the back of the machine there. Just let it stay there. We're going to place our finger right here on top of the needle threader. We're going to press all the way down, slide backwards, slide forward, and release. And what that does, it gives you this little loop. Can you see that little loop there? I'll try to point it out a little clearer. It gives you this little loop here that you can then grab a hold of and pull through the needle. And your needle is threaded. I'll use this little highlighter so you can see a clearer view. But that's how you want your thread to be routed, straight down the needle, through the eye of the needle to the back. One last tip, make sure your thread stays under the presser foot and towards the back of the machine. And you should always have long thread tails. I would say 4 to 6 inches of thread hanging out behind your presser foot. Okay, we will take a break, come back, and show you how to load the bobbin. Okay, we're back. We're going to walk you through the steps of how to load the bobbin. The first thing you're going to do is go ahead and slide off your window here by pressing down and just sliding it towards you. Don't lose that, you will need it. The next thing you're going to do is position your bobbin in the way that the thread is pulling counterclockwise. I tell my students in class, make it look like the letter P, if that helps you remember the direction of counterclockwise. So once you have that positioned correctly, we're simply going to drop it into the house. So we're going right here, dropping that in. From here, we're going to do our best to zoom into this little area right there. We're going to take our thread, making sure it's wrapping around this little hook first. You can see this arrow on the plastic here. It's showing you exactly where you need to route your thread. So that's our first step. Make sure you catch that little hook. Do not skip this step. From there, we're just going to take it up. We're going right up here towards, I call this like we're going up a mountain. We're going up the mountain, letting our thread just fall right into that little groove. Pull down the mountain. And then as you pull to the right, the machine is actually going to trim the thread for you. It's going to cut it. So make sure your thread does stay in this little track. Sometimes if you pull it very quickly, it will kind of jump back into the machine. You don't want that. But again, do not, I would say number one mistake a lot of people will make is forgetting this little hook right here. When you're looking at your machine, you will see it much clearer, but it's right there. Again, if you just line up your thread with the diagram here and then route it right up to this little mountain, you're gonna be just fine. And make sure it is counterclockwise before dropping it into the house.